Your fear of being alone has turned you into someone you're not. You've become a chameleon, changing your colors to match whatever crowd you're in, morphing your opinions to fit whatever conversation you're having, twisting your personality to please whoever you're with. You've gotten so good at being what everyone else needs that you've forgotten who you actually are. And the worst part, you're not fooling anyone but yourself. People can sense your desperation for approval, your fear of solitude, your constant need for validation. It's repelling the very connections you're trying so desperately to create. The quietest voice in the room is often the one that carries the most power. Have you ever noticed how the people who seem most at peace with themselves rarely need to announce their presence? They don't chase attention, yet somehow they're the ones everyone wants to be around. There's something magnetic about them, an invisible force that draws others in without effort. What if I told you that this magnetic quality isn't something they were born with? What if the very thing many of us fear, being alone, is actually the secret source of their power? Right now in this room, some of you are shifting uncomfortably in your seats. The mere mention of being alone triggers something deep within. We've been conditioned to believe that being alone means being lonely, that seeking solitude somehow makes us less connected, less successful, less worthy of love and attention. But here's the truth that society doesn't want you to know. Your need to constantly be surrounded by others is not a sign of connection. It's a sign of fear. Fear of what you might discover in those quiet moments when no one else is around to distract you from your own thoughts. Let me share something with you about human nature. Every person who has ever achieved something truly remarkable in their life has first learned to embrace solitude. Not because they were antisocial, not because they didn't value connection, but because they understood a fundamental truth. You cannot truly connect with others until you've learned to connect with yourself. Think about the last time you were alone. Not alone with your phone, not alone while watching TV or scrolling through social media, truly alone. How long did you last before the discomfort set in, before you reached for some form of distraction? Before you felt an overwhelming urge to text someone, anyone, just to feel less that discomfort you feel. That's not a warning sign telling you to seek company. That's your inner self begging for your attention. It's the part of you that knows you've been running from your thoughts, your feelings, your truth, running from the very thing that could make you unstoppable. When you learn to sit with that discomfort, something magical begins to happen. The noise in your mind starts to settle. The constant need for external validation begins to fade. You start to hear your own voice, not the voice of your parents, your friends, society, or social media. Your voice. And that voice has been waiting to tell you something important. You see, being alone isn't about isolation. It's about cultivation. Like a garden that needs space between plants to grow strong and healthy, your spirit needs moments of solitude to develop its own unique essence. This is where your magnetic quality begins to emerge. People who are comfortable being alone develop something that no amount of social skills training can provide: authentic presence. They don't enter a room thinking about how to be seen. They enter a room fully seeing others. They don't speak to fill silence. They speak because they have something meaningful to say. They don't seek attention because they don't need it to feel whole. Have you ever wondered why certain people seem to attract opportunities effortlessly? Why some individuals never seem to chase relationships, yet always seem to be surrounded by deep, meaningful connections? These people have mastered something that most of the world is trying desperately to avoid. They've mastered the art of being alone. But let's be honest, this isn't easy. We live in a world that profits from your fear of solitude. Social media platforms, dating apps, endless entertainment options, they all exist to keep you from facing that quiet moment with yourself. They want you to believe that being alone means missing out, that every moment not shared is a moment wasted. The truth is, the most profound moments in life often happen when no one else is watching. The biggest breakthroughs come in those silent spaces between the noise. Your most authentic self emerges not in the crowd, but in the quiet. Think about water for a moment. When water is turbulent, it reflects nothing clearly. But when water is still, it becomes a perfect mirror, reflecting everything around it with pristine clarity. In constant social turbulence, you can't reflect clearly on your life. your choices, your true desires. But in solitude, everything becomes clear. This clarity, this is what makes you magnetic. When you know who you are, when you're comfortable in your own skin, when you don't need others to feel complete, that's when others are naturally drawn to you. They sense something different about you. They feel your self-containment, your inner peace, your authenticity. The irony is beautiful, isn't it? The very thing you've been avoiding, being alone, is the very thing that could make you irresistible to others. Not in a manipulative way, but in the most authentic way possible. Because when you're truly comfortable being alone, you stop trying to be someone else. You stop trying to fill every silence with noise. You stop trying to prove your worth to others because you finally understand your inherent value. This is where true transformation begins. Not in the countless self-help books you've read, not in the motivational videos you've watched, not in the endless social activities you've engaged in. It begins in those moments when you dare to be alone with yourself, when you dare to listen to your own wisdom, when you dare to trust your own guidance. But what happens in those moments of solitude? What actually transforms within us when we learn to embrace being alone? Let me share something profound with you about the human spirit. Every time you choose to sit with yourself instead of reaching for distraction, you're building an inner strength that no external circumstance can shake. Think about the strongest people you know. Not physically strong, but emotionally strong. The ones who remain calm in chaos, who don't crumble under pressure, who seem to have an endless well of wisdom to draw from. These people weren't born this way. They developed this strength through countless hours of self-reflection, through choosing to face their inner storms alone. There's a fascinating phenomenon that occurs when you start spending quality time with yourself. You begin to notice patterns in your behavior that you've never seen before. You start to understand why you react the way you do in certain situations, why certain comments trigger you, why you feel threatened by certain types of people, why you keep repeating the same relationship patterns. This awareness, it's like turning on a light in a room you've been stumbling around in for years. Suddenly, you can see everything clearly. The furniture you've been bumping into, the obstacles you've been tripping over, they've been there all along, but now you can navigate around them gracefully. But here's where it gets really interesting. As you develop this self-awareness, something shifts in how others perceive you. They can't quite put their finger on it, but something about you seems different, more solid, more real, more trustworthy. You see, when you're comfortable being alone, you stop using other people as emotional crutches. You stop expecting them to fill your voids or fix your problems. Instead, you show up in relationships, whether personal or professional, as a whole. And whole people are magnetic. Think about the last time you met someone who was completely at ease with themselves, someone who didn't try to impress you, didn't try to fill every silence with nervous chatter, didn't need your approval. How did that person make you feel? Chances are you felt more relaxed around them, more authentic, more seen. That's because people who are comfortable with solitude develop a rare quality. They become safe spaces for others. They don't judge because they've learned to stop judging themselves. They don't need to control because they've learned to flow with life's uncertainties. They don't need to prove anything because they've found their worth in something deeper than external validation. We are all searching for authenticity in a world of masks. We are all longing to be seen, truly seen by someone who has the capacity to hold space for our truth. But here's the catch. You can't hold space for others until you've learned to hold space. This is where the magnetism really begins to develop. When you can sit with your own pain, you can sit with others' pain. When you can face your own fears, you can help others face theirs. When you can embrace your own imperfections, you become a safe harbor for others' vulnerabilities. The world is full of people running from themselves, drowning their inner voice in noise and distraction. When they encounter someone who's done the inner work, who has learned to embrace solitude, who radiates that quiet confidence that comes from self-knowledge, they're naturally drawn to that person. But let's talk about what this journey really looks like, because it's not always peaceful meditation and profound insights. Sometimes it's sitting with uncomfortable emotions until they pass. Sometimes it's facing hard truths about yourself that you've been avoiding. Sometimes it's feeling the full weight of your loneliness and choosing to stay present with it. instead of running to the nearest distraction. Have you ever noticed how the most difficult emotions are often the ones that teach us the most? When you're alone, really alone, these emotions surface. They demand to be felt, to be acknowledged, to be processed. This is where real emotional intelligence is born. In these moments of solitude, you learn that emotions are like waves. They rise, they peak, they fall. When you stop fighting them, stop trying to suppress them or run from them, you discover something revolutionary. No emotion lasts. This understanding gives you a kind of emotional stability that makes you a rock for others in their storms. The magnetic quality we're talking about isn't about becoming more outgoing or sociable. It's about becoming more real, more authentic, more comfortable in your own skin. It's about developing the kind of presence that makes others feel they can be themselves around you. When you learn to be alone, you stop needing others to behave in certain ways to make you feel okay. You stop trying to control situations to avoid discomfort. You stop seeking constant reassurance because you've found something more reliable, your own inner compass. This inner compass, this deep knowing that develops in solitude, becomes your greatest asset. It guides your decisions, your relationships, your career choices. It helps you distinguish between opportunities that align with your true self and those that would require you to compromise your authenticity. The most powerful leaders, the most inspiring teachers, the most trusted friends, they all share this quality. They've learned to listen to their inner wisdom above the noise of the world. They've developed this ability through countless hours of solitude, through choosing to face themselves honestly, through doing the inner work that most people avoid. And now we come to the heart of transformation, the space where insight meets action, where understanding becomes embodiment, where knowledge transforms into wisdom. You might be wondering what this journey of embracing solitude actually looks like in everyday life. How does it manifest in your relationships, your career, your daily choices? Let's explore this together because this is where theory becomes reality. When you truly embrace being alone, your relationships transform first. Not because you change others, but because you stop needing them to be different. Think about that for a moment. How many of your relationship struggles come from wanting others to behave different, to understand you better, to meet your needs in specific ways? The beautiful paradox is that when you learn to meet your own needs in solitude, your relationships become more fulfilling. Not because others change, but because you no longer approach them from a place of emotional hunger. You come to them from a place of fullness, of choice, of genuine desire to connect, rather than desperate need to fill a void. Your decision-making changes next. When you're comfortable being alone, you stop making choices based on fear of missing out or fear of others' judgments. You develop an inner clarity that helps you distinguish between opportunities that truly align with your values and those that merely promise external validation. Have you noticed how many of your past decisions were influenced by what others might think? How many times have you said yes when your heart was screaming no? How many times have you chosen the safe path over the authentic one because you feared facing disapproval alone? This is where the magnetic quality begins to manifest in your professional life. People trust leaders who make decisions from a place of inner conviction rather than external pressure. They respect individuals who can stand alone in their truth, even if they're drawn to those who don't need consensus to know their own mind. But let's talk about something that might feel uncomfortable. The way society often responds when you start embracing solitude. Not everyone will understand your journey. Some might interpret your need for alone time as rejection. Others might feel threatened by your growing self-sufficiency. Many will try to pull you back into old patterns of constant connection and distraction. This is where your commitment to inner growth is tested. Can you stay true to your path even when others don't understand it? Can you trust your inner knowing, even when external voices question your choices? This is where true strength develops, not in the absence of opposition, but in your ability to stand firm in your truth despite it. The most profound changes often happen in the smallest moments. In that pause before responding to a triggering comment, where you choose self-reflection over reaction. In that moment when you feel the urge to reach for your phone to escape an uncomfortable emotion, but choose to sit with the feeling instead. In that instance, when you feel the pull, to join an activity out of fear of being left out, but choose to honor your need for solitude. These small choices compound over time, creating a foundation of self-trust that becomes unshakable. And here's what's fascinating: as this self-trust grows, your need to explain yourself to others diminishes. You develop a quiet confidence that doesn't need to announce itself. This is when your magnetic quality becomes most powerful. Think about how different your life would be if you approached every situation from a place of inner fullness rather than need. How would your conversations change if you weren't trying to prove anything? How would your relationships transform if you weren't trying to get anything from them? How would your career evolve if you weren't seeking validation through your achievements? The truth is, most people spend their entire lives running from themselves. They fill every moment with noise, activity, and distraction. They maintain surface-level connections with dozens of people, but never develop a deep connection with themselves. They know everyone's opinion about everything, but have no idea what they truly think or feel. When you choose a different path, when you choose to develop a relationship with yourself through solitude, you become a living example of another way of being. Your presence alone becomes an invitation for others to go deeper, to be more authentic, to face what they've been avoiding. This is where your magnetic quality becomes a force for transformation in the world. Not because you're trying to change anyone, but because your authentic presence naturally inspires others to question their own patterns of avoidance and distraction. The world desperately needs people who have done this inner work. People who can remain centered in chaos, who can offer genuine presence instead of empty platitudes, who can hold space for others' growth because they've learned to hold space for their own. But remember, this journey isn't about becoming someone different. It's about becoming more fully yourself. It's about peeling away the layers of social conditioning that have taught you to fear solitude. It's about rediscovering the natural state of being that you knew before the world convinced you that constant connection was the only way to live. In solitude, you rediscover your natural rhythm. You remember what it feels like to move through life guided by inner wisdom rather than external pressures. You reconnect with the part of yourself that deeply knows what's right for you, what's true for you, what's authentic for you. There's a moment in this journey of embracing solitude that no one really talks about. A moment when you start to feel the magnetic power building within you, but simultaneously face your deepest resistances. This is where the real work begins. You see, as you become more comfortable being alone, as you develop that inner strength we've been talking about, something unexpected happens. Your presence begins to trigger others. Not because you're doing anything wrong, but because your growing comfort with solitude mirrors their discomfort with themselves. This is a crucial turning point. This is where many people retreat back to their old patterns of constant connection and distraction. They feel the resistance from others, the subtle or not so subtle pressure to return to normal, and they begin to doubt but what if I told you that this resistance is actually a sign that you're on the right track? What if these moments of doubt are actually doorways to even deeper levels of authenticity and personal power? Think about water again for a moment. When you're learning to swim, there's a point where you have to let go of the edge of the pool. That moment of letting go feels terrifying. Every instinct tells you to grab hold again, to return to what feels safe. But it's only in letting go that you discover your natural ability to float. The same principle applies to this journey of embracing solitude. There's a point where you have to let go of old patterns of seeking constant validation, constant connection, constant distraction. And yes, it feels terrifying. Every social conditioning you've ever received screams at you to go back to the safety of constant connection. We discover a kind of freedom that most people never experience. The freedom to be fully yourself without apology. The freedom to move through life guided by your own inner compass rather than external pressures. The freedom to connect with others from a place of choice rather than need. This freedom changes everything. It changes how you show up in meetings at work. Instead of feeling the need to speak just to be noticed, you speak when you have something meaningful to contribute. And when you do speak, people listen. Not because you're trying to command attention, but because your words carry the weight of authentic conviction. It changes how you show up in relationships. Instead of trying to fill every silence with conversation, you become comfortable with quiet moments. You stop trying to fix other people's problems and start holding space for them to find their own solutions. You become a sanctuary of calm in a world of chaos. But let's be honest about something that might be uncomfortable to hear. This journey will change your social life. Some friendships might fade. Some relationships might fade. Some relationships might end. Some people might distance. Not because you've done anything wrong, but because your growing authenticity makes their inauthenticity uncomfortable. This is where many people get stuck. They feel this shift happening in their relationships, and they panic. They think something's wrong. They try to hold on to relationships that are naturally falling away, or they try to return to old patterns of behavior to maintain connections that no longer serve their growth. But what if these changes in your social circle aren't a loss, but a realignment? What if the relationships that fall away are making space for deeper, more authentic connections to form? What if the temporary discomfort of this transition is actually leading you toward a more genuine, fulfilling social life? You start attracting people who resonate with your authentic energy, people who aren't afraid of depth, who aren't running from themselves, who appreciate the power of meaningful silence as much as meaningful conversation. Your magnetic quality becomes a filter, naturally drawing in those who are ready for genuine connection, while gently repelling those who are still caught in patterns of superficial interaction. This is where the magic really begins to unfold. You start experiencing relationships that don't drain you, conversations that energize rather than deplete, connections that deepen your sense of self rather than requiring you to compromise it. But there's something even more profound that happens at this stage of the journey. You start recognizing the sacred nature of aloneness in others. You see beyond their social mess, beyond their busy schedules and constant activities, to the part of them that longs for solitude but doesn't know how to embrace it. And because you've walked this path yourself, because you've faced your own fears of being alone, you can hold space for others to discover this truth for themselves. Not by preaching or trying to change them, but by being a living example of what's possible when you embrace solitude. This is where your magnetic quality becomes not just a personal asset, but a gift to the world. In a society that's increasingly afraid of silence, increasingly addicted to distraction, increasingly unable to be alone with itself, your comfort with solitude becomes a quiet revolution. You become living proof that there's another way to be in the world. That constant connection isn't the path to fulfillment. That true strength doesn't come from external validation, but from internal alignment. That real magnetism isn't about attracting everyone, but about attracting the right ones, those who are ready for authentic connection, those who value depth over distraction, those who understand the power of solitude. As we come to this moment of deeper understanding, let's explore what happens when this journey of embracing solitude fully matures. What becomes possible when you've truly integrated this practice into every aspect of your life. The most profound shift occurs in how you experience time. When you're comfortable being alone, time transforms from something to fill into something to savor. Those empty spaces in your calendar stop feeling like voids to be filled and start feeling like opportunities for renewal. The gaps between activities become sacred spaces where creativity flourishes, where wisdom emerges, where inner strength builds. Think about how different your life would be if you stopped treating alone time as something to endure and started treating it as something to cherish. How would your evenings feel if you didn't automatically reach for distraction? How would your mornings transform if you didn't immediately plug into the world's noise? The truth is, in these moments of chosen solitude, you develop a superpower that's becoming increasingly rare in our hyper-connected world. The ability to think original thoughts. Not thoughts influenced by social media, not opinions borrowed from others, not ideas shaped by the constant stream of information we're all swimming in. Original thoughts that emerge from the depths of your own being. This originality of thought makes you magnetic in a way that no amount of social skills training ever could. Because in a world where most people are simply recycling other people's ideas, someone who thinks original thoughts stands out like a lighthouse in the dark. But here's something even more powerful. When you're truly comfortable being alone, you develop an unshakable sense of self-worth that's completely independent of external circumstances. Your value no longer fluctuates based on who's paying attention to you, who's validating you, who's choosing you. You become your own source of validation, your own source of comfort, your own source of strength. This inner security changes how you move through the world. You stop trying to prove your worth because you no longer doubt it. You stop trying to justify your choices because you trust your inner guidance. You stop trying to explain yourself because you're comfortable with not being understood by everyone. And paradoxically, this is when your magnetic quality becomes strongest, because there's nothing more attractive than someone who knows their worth without needing to announce it. There's nothing more compelling than someone who's comfortable in their own skin without needing others to make them feel that. The world is full of people desperately seeking approval, desperately trying to be chosen, desperately attempting to prove their worth. When they encounter someone who's free from these desperate energies, they can't help but be drawn to that person's presence. But let's be clear about something. This magnetic quality isn't about building a bigger ego or becoming more self-centered. In fact, it's quite the opposite. When you're truly comfortable being alone, your ego softens. You no longer need to defend your position, prove your point, or win every argument. You develop a kind of humility that comes from knowing yourself deeply. This humility, combined with self-assurance, creates a presence that others find both comforting and inspiring. You become like a deep, calm lake that reflects others back to themselves clearly while remaining unshakable in your own depth. The ultimate gift of embracing solitude is that it allows you to bring your full presence to every moment, every interaction, every relationship. You stop showing up partially because you're no longer afraid of showing up fully. You stop holding back because you're no longer afraid of being too much. You stop pretending because you're no longer afraid of being seen. This full presence, this complete showing up, this authentic way of being new, this is what makes you truly magnetic. Not in a way that desperately seeks to attract others, but in a way that naturally draws the right people, opportunities, and experiences into your life. As you leave this room today, remember this: the journey of embracing solitude isn't about becoming a hermit or disconnecting from the world. It's about developing the inner strength to be fully yourself in a world that's constantly trying to make you something else. It's about cultivating the wisdom to know when to connect and when to retreat. It's about building the courage to face yourself honestly so you can engage with others authentically. Every time you choose solitude over distraction, silence over noise, self-reflection over self-escape, you're building this magnetic quality within yourself. Every time you resist the urge to fill empty spaces with meaningless activity, you're strengthening your authentic presence. Every time you choose to sit with your own thoughts instead of drowning them out, you're developing your unique power. The world doesn't need more people who are afraid to be alone. The world needs people who have found their center, who have done their inner work, who have developed the strength to stand in their truth even when standing alone. You have everything you need to begin this journey. The only question is, will you have the courage to embrace solitude? Will you dare to discover who you are when no one else is watching? Will you brave the initial discomfort of being alone to discover the magnetic power that lies on the other side of that discomfort? The choice is yours, the journey is yours, the transformation is yours. And when you make this choice, when you embrace this journey, when you allow this transformation, you'll discover that being alone never meant being lonely. It meant becoming whole. And in your wholeness, you become a light that naturally draws others toward their... This is your invitation to discover the magnetic power of being alone. This is your opportunity to transform your relationship with solitude. This is your moment to begin the journey toward authentic presence. The world is waiting for people who have found their center. The world is ready for people who have embraced their solitude. The world is calling for people who have discovered their magnetic power. That person can be you. That person is you. That person will be you when you dare to embrace the transformative power of being alone. Thank you for your presence, your attention, and your willingness to explore this journey together. May you find the courage to embrace solitude, the wisdom to trust your inner voice, and the strength to become the magnetic presence you were always meant to be.